When I was about 9, my brothers and I stayed at my grandparents' for a weekend. They lived out in the boondocks and an area that had just been cleared and started to become developed. They were the fourth house built there, but the neighborhood next to the area was fully developed and populated. One night, we, grandparents, aunt, myself, and three brothers were all sitting outside in the light of the light post that was next to our house and by the steel dirt road. We were watching a TV that was sitting on the windowsill but pointed outside. Those were warm nights in Mexico, so we sat outside in the cool breeze of the night. Out of nowhere, we start to hear a lot of barking. The dogs from the neighborhood nearby had started barking at something all at once. The barking reached the second neighborhood, and immediately the barking became an army. I have never heard anything like it since. So many dogs barking at once, some crying, some howling, insanity. Suddenly we realized the dogs were coming in mass down the street towards us. We all jumped up to the attention and just stared down straight. There, by the light of the farthest light post, a group of dogs came into view, and then more and then more. The street was covered in dogs except for one spot right in the middle. They were all barking at this spot. My grandfather quickly grabbed his shotgun and walked right towards the mass of barking chaos. He thought it was a wild animal the dogs were chasing. He was one light post distance away when he stopped, put his shotgun down, and walked back to us. He told my grandpa, "This is of no use here," gesturing at the shotgun. "This one is on you." My grandmother was an extremely devoted Catholic and carried her Bible everywhere. It sat by the TV and she rushed over to grab it and quickly looked for a page on it. The dogs reached the light post my grandfather was at earlier and we saw it. There in the middle of the dog pack, a woman walking down the street. She got closer and I saw what grandfather saw. She was floating about a foot off the ground. She was still making the gesture of walking, but her feet were nowhere near the ground. The dogs would take turns trying to bite her feet, but upon their attempt, they would cry as if hurt and run back, and another dog would take its turn, and so on and on. My aunt became terrified and grabbed us kids. She tried to cover our eyes and yelled at us to not look at it. It became evident to me that this was a serious thing happening when she, my aunt, a non-Catholic, started praying. We were more curious than anything, weirded out by the scene but not scared yet. My grandmother had started praying and the dogs dissipated when they reached her. They just ran off in all directions, about 60 or more dogs that were still there. That's when I saw her up close and my life changed. She had wavy hair that was flowing behind her as she walked and no face. Nothing like a blur, but it was flat, hard to describe. The terror overtook me at that point and I couldn't look away. Her dress was like an old-timey summer dress that covered the shoulders and dropped to just above her ankles. I could almost see a print on it. Her feet were transparent, as was the bottom of her dress that trailed behind her like smoke. But not like smoke, like it was torn. She had a slight glow to her, like she was walking in midday, but her color was gone. She was pale, her dress was pale, and her hair was white, and no face. Our cries at that point triggered both my grandfather and my aunt to pull us into the house. As I was making my way into the house, I looked back and saw my grandmother holding her Bible and confronting this being face to face. We could hear a woman screaming very loudly and suddenly crying, cursing. We looked out the window to see the woman in white rapidly float over a nearby drainage canal and disappear. My grandmother walked back inside with a big grin on her face, and all she said was, "Don't worry, she won't be back." I was forced to become a believer that day. I didn't ask for it, nor did I want it. I suddenly was just a believer. I have had paranormal experiences throughout my life, but the scariest was when my little brother was 6 and I was 25 and we moved into a modern home my mother and stepfather still live in. The day we moved in, I was sat on the toilet and I hear something clatter to the floor. I presume it's my earring or something, but I looked down to find a child's milk tooth. There was nowhere for it to jump off, and I thought weird, but didn't pay too much attention. However, months later, I was awoken by a little boy shouting boo in my ear. Even that I passed off as a dream until the same thing happened to my mom and we realized we had experienced the same thing. My little brother began complaining about seeing the three grey figures stood at the end of his bed every night just watching him. He insisted on keeping his door ajar so he could have the light/noise filter in from the rest of the household. To be honest, we didn't take much notice as for some reason we didn't put all the activity together until years later. Poor kid. Around this time, I got very interested in developing psychic gifts, which probably wasn't a good thing. It's a long story, but I had a crush on a little known session musician at that time, and his address literally popped into my head one day. This was pre-internet, and I nearly fainted when directory enquirers gave me his number. And yes, I rang and he sent me some signed CDs, which was pretty cool. I started to have out-of-body experiences where I definitely wasn't just dreaming. I would find myself in the hall knowing I was out of my body and hearing the TV in the living room or on the street outside. That scared me the most. I also began to suffer sleep paralysis. One day I woke up and I literally felt myself fall through the bed. I braced, expecting to hit the floor, but then suddenly it felt as if I was floating on the sea. That was a pleasant experience. My mother then saw a man walk up the garden in broad daylight. The only way in was through the house, so it wasn't a living person. Plus, it was only later she realized he had made no sound on the gravel. My middle brother would hear the piano playing downstairs when everyone was out. He used to wait until we came home before he dared come down. A very unnerving experience was when I was left to house sit when the rest of the family went on holiday. I was making tea and I heard our dog growling ferociously from the living room. So ferociously I thought someone must have broken in, so I grabbed a knife and crept through where I found her lunging at a spot midway up at the wall. I had to drag her away. Several dogs the family have owned over the years have also growled at something we couldn't see on the stairs. The family also began to see a ghost dog just before a family pet died. My husband even saw it in our home after I moved 100 miles away just before my brother's dog unexpectedly had to be PTS and he hadn't been told of this strange omen. We have also heard a bell chime in the house several times and children's music books start to play in the middle of the night, which was very creepy. Several photos we took in that house continued to develop after they had been developed, which was unexplainable. My mother would also feel someone walk past her many times when she was washing up, the sink being right next to the back door. I did some research on the estate and years ago it was a farmland with the farmhouse not far from where the houses now stand. I think it's also worth noting my mother and stepfather had a very toxic relationship and I wonder if the negativity attracted or fueled such experiences. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house. Both of my parents worked long hours, so her place became like a second home. She was a tough old woman, real thin but strong. Sometimes I would watch her going about her routine and wonder if she was some kind of a witch. She just had a witchy way about her. But of course, might just be what resourcefulness looks like to a kid. Anyway, her house didn't help. It was old, and everything in it was old, and it was dark. I don't know how best to describe it other than to say I always felt that being inside my grandma's house wasn't much different from being outside of it. In any season, the windows in the house would stay jammed open with old bent screens, which had to be shimmed into a place with old slats from some discarded Louvre door. Grandma had this rusty potbelly stove right smack in the middle of her bedroom. I remember constantly dodging it as I ran through the house playing. At night, she would load the stove with one great big chunk of hickory, and you could see the flames leaking through the cracks. I would lay on the floor with my sleeping bag, positioning myself so that the stove was in between me and Grandma's bed. Facing this direction meant that I could easily see the window at the foot of her bed. It was like a nightlight for me. Everything in that house was black at night, unless there's a window nearby. So there I lay one night. It was chilly, and I remember having trouble sleeping because the moonlight coming through the window was so bright. It was late, which meant the stove wasn't roaring anymore. Besides my grandma's breathing, the whole house was dead silent. It was just the two of us. No one else was in the house. Without any warning, a tall black figure calmly walks from the shadows at the far side of the room. He passed between the stove and bed, across the floor, just a foot from my head, and out through the doorway into the kitchen. I was petrified, couldn't move an inch. This may sound crazy, but had I felt like a burglar was in the house, I would like to think I would have moved, or shouted, or something. I didn't think it was a burglar though. No specific reason why. It just felt wrong. I don't think I fell asleep that night. All I remember is staring at the kitchen doorway for a long, long time. When my grandma woke up, she rolled out of bed and grabbed the fire poker. I sat up and began to tell her what I had saw. Like I said, I always felt like my grandma was a little bit witchy. After I finished telling her about the tall man, she just poked at the coals in the stove and said, haven't seen him in a long time. The summer after my fourth grade year, we moved to a new house on the outside of town. An old lady had lived there alone for several years after her husband passed, didn't finish paying the mortgage, and then passed away as well. My parents ending up purchasing the house from the bank, and when we started to move in, everything that was hers was still there. Cups and plates in the cabinets, food in the refrigerator, pillows and sheets on the beds. Being that we didn't live in 1960, we got rid of all her things. Most we threw in a dumpster, but other items were burned in a pit located in the backyard, 10 plus acres of land. Before we were officially moved in, my aunt, uncle and 5-year-old cousin went to the house to check it out while my parents were at work. After walking through the house while getting into the car, my cousin asked, "Who is my new grandma?" My aunt replied, "You don't have a new grandma. This is your aunt and uncle's new home." My cousin replied, "Then who was the old lady in there?" This was dismissed at the time as just something a kid would say thinking he saw a picture or something. A few months later, after we were completely moved in, my mom was laying in bed about to fall asleep. She typically falls asleep quickly, but this night she was having a bit of trouble. She felt the bed sink down behind her, laying on her side facing the middle of the bed, and assumed it was the cat jumping up. About 5 minutes passed and she still couldn't fall asleep. She opened her eyes and turned around to see the cat, but no cat. Just deep in the bed as if someone was sitting there, but there was nothing. A few weeks later, my dad is laying in bed in the morning, dreading his upcoming workday and just trying to have a few relaxing minutes to himself. Laying on his back with one pillow under his head, he suddenly felt something tugging at the pillow. He lifted his head slightly and the pillow went flying across the room. Again, nothing was there. Come Christmas, we had 2 trees. One was a real tree that was located in our main family room. This tree had all the ornaments that my parents had collected throughout the years. In what we called the front living room, which was the room we were not allowed in due to having fancy furniture, we had a fake tree that was decorated with red bulbs, blue bulbs and tinsel. One morning we woke up and there was a semicircle of 6 red bulbs that had been plucked from the tree, metal hook and cap still on the tree, laying on the ground halfway around the tree. Neither me nor my 2 brothers would have done this because 1. Why? And second, we actually got spankings in this day. Same Christmas, we had our family over for a celebration. Everything went according to plan and nothing out of the ordinary occurred. That is, until family members went to have pictures developed. The pictures that didn't have the Christmas tree in them were 100% fine and normal. The pictures from multiple cameras that did have the Christmas tree in them were all messed up. It looked like the bulbs were moving vigorously as the pictures were taken. Then in one image there seemed to be multiple skull-like objects with long tails floating over our family. Now, the Whopper story. This is one hard to believe. And I literally only told the other stories to validate this one. Something was obviously going on at this house. One cold night, my brothers and I were home alone because my mother was working late. We decided that we wanted to go outside to play some basketball. My brothers, one 2 years older than me and the other 4 years younger, went outside ahead of me as I still needed to put on socks and tell the ladies good night on MSN Messenger. As I was on the computer and putting on my socks, I looked up into the kitchen and saw an old lady standing in the corner, spinning a small cup with her left hand. I freaked out and ran outside to get my older brother. When I got to him and told him what I had seen, I could tell he didn't believe me, but he picked up a tennis racket just in case. We walked up through the back and went into the door that leads directly into the kitchen. My older brother walked to the corner where I saw her, and my younger brother and I walked around the island to the entry of the dining room. My older brother, standing in the corner where I saw her, turned around to look at me and said, "See, there is nothing here." Just as the words came out of his mouth, poof, she appears right behind him. I yell, "Turn around." He does. He sees her. Panicked, he says, "Oh, hello." He takes one step back and then the front of his shirt wrinkles up as if she is grabbing him. But we can't see her hands. He tries to kick, but he was tossed onto his back and slid across the laminate kitchen floor. My younger brother lets out a scream and instantly, wham, the cup she was spinning when I first saw her went flying across the kitchen and hit my brother in the chest, leaving a bruise. We all three ran out of the front door and sat outside for hours before my mom got home. My dad was a skeptic and interrogated us individually to get the story. After his assessment, he said it must be true because we had never described anything exactly the same before this moment. My mom was the religious one in the household and she had a pastor come to bless the house. About a week later, we had a plumber come to our home to fix some things that were outdated, and he was talking to my dad about the house. My dad did not say a word about what had been going on, but after the conversation, the plumber did something very odd. He said, "Honestly, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this, but I feel like I need to. Do you have any scotch tape?" My dad opened the junk drawer and pulled out the tape. The plumber then pulled a small brass cross out of his pocket and taped it to the window right next to where my brothers and I encountered the ghost. We didn't experience any paranormal activity after that day, and the cross is still there. For me, it started when I was 4 years old. At the time, I used to sleep with my door slightly open and my bed positioned in such a way that I could see out into the landing from where my pillow was. I would wake up in the middle of the night fairly regularly, mostly to call out for water. It started with me being able to see the silhouette of a figure pacing back and forth silently across the landing in the darkness, just barely visible thanks to the light coming from my room, thanks to me having my light dim and a night light. This went on for a few nights in a row until one night the figure was standing at the crack of my door looking into the room. I couldn't make out any features and didn't really want to. The next day, I told my parents I would like my door to be shut when it was time for bed. I wasn't really scared at this point, just kind of confused as to what was going on. Things seemed okay for a few days, then one night I woke up again. I don't know why I thought of it, but I had sort of a childish eureka moment in my little child brain that hiding under my bedsheet was the best idea ever. So I did. Now, as mentioned, my light was dimmed and I had a night light. I also had very thin sheets instead of blankets, which meant that coupled with the light, I could just barely see out into my room. So I was doing just that, eyes open, looking into my room. Then a figure rose up from the side of my bed. I couldn't make out any proper details, nothing that stuck in my mind, but it was there, and it was breathing, slowly, heavily, and rhythmically. I still wasn't aware enough to be afraid, but just lay there quietly watching it until I felt something touch my head. I put my hands up to feel what it was. It was a huge hand and was very hot to the touch. I called out asking, "Dad? Brother?" thinking someone had come into my room to pull a joke on me, but got nothing but the breathing back. Then I felt something at my feet, and it felt like fingers were stroking and poking at the bottom of my feet. The figure visibly bent down and leaned into where my head was under the sheets. I could tell it was looking at me. I don't really remember the rest of the night, but the next day I asked for a proper blanket and somehow got it that very same day. That's not the end of it though. For the next 4 years, this thing would visit me every single night. It became a routine, and it wasn't sleep paralysis as I could move, and it wasn't a dream as little things like having a cold or a bruise from playing and little details a kid's dream doesn't keep stayed with me. Each night I would know it was coming because I would hear the creaky floorboard on the landing outside my room sound like someone had walked over it. My door wouldn't open, but then the breathing would start. I always slept under my blankets by that point, and then it would put its hand on me, more than two. It would put hands around my ankles and wrists, press one into my back and stomach, and place one on top of my head without moving the blankets at all. And we would spend an hour or more there like that every night, with me barely daring to take a breath and trying my best not to move, eyes squeezed shut. It was worse when I did have a cold, because I would be trying not to cough or sniffle, or in the middle of summer when it was too hot to be bundled up under my covers. For 4 years, that thing showed up, though during the last year it started to skip days, progressively missing more and more until it was just gone. Still remember the feeling though, that kind of terror that just utterly encompasses your entire body, flushes you with adrenaline, makes the air feel so heavy, completely oppressive air. I did almost see it once too, when I didn't think to realize what time it was and was trying to call to my mom for a glass of water. I realized I had been calling for 10 to 20 minutes out in the open and was seriously exposed just as I saw a head with very grey, mottled skin starting to crest from beside my bed. All I saw before I shot under the covers faster than I could blink. My folks never really believed me, saying that it was my imagination or night terrors or a recurring nightmare. I have tried asking them about it now and then, but it's always sort of waved off and ignored. I am 30 now and still have trouble sleeping in the dark or overexposed out of my sheets. I know it doesn't sound entirely believable, partly due to how I write I imagine and how kind of storybook it sounds. That's fine, but hey, I'm just sharing my experience.